I'd been gone for about 6 months, working a pipeline job up north. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I was doing it for the land, my ranch. I couldn't wait to get back to the quiet, the open space, my animals, and most of all, my wife. But the moment I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. There were signs I'd never seen before. HOA notices. Property standards must be maintained. Unauthorized structures will be cited. I thought it was a joke at first. My ranch? In an HOA? I went inside and asked my wife what the hell was going on. She gave me a look like she'd been waiting for me to ask. Turns out that while I was gone, a new housing development had gone up just a few parcels over. Some slick developer built about 20 identical houses and convinced the county to allow them to form a homeowners association. That wasn't the crazy part, though. The crazy part was that they tried to expand the HOA to include neighboring properties, including ours, without a single signature from us. Next thing we knew, letters started coming in the mail. They said we were in violation of community standards. Our barn wasn't the right color. Our horses were too close to the residential boundary. Our wire fencing didn't meet aesthetic requirements. They even fined us for having an unapproved mailbox, the same one we'd had for years. I wanted to go over there and raise hell. But my wife, she stayed calm. She just poured herself a glass of sweet tea, opened up her laptop, and got to work. What I didn't mention earlier is that before she was a rancher's wife, she went to law school. Never practiced full-time, but she knew her stuff, especially when it came to property law. And she hates being told what to do on her own land. She started digging. Within a few days, she'd found a whole list of violations the HOA had committed. Their annexation process hadn't followed state law. They never properly notified adjacent landowners. They'd forged the existence of a majority vote on the expansion. She even found out their filing with the county clerk was missing key documentation. She drafted letters, cited case law, and filed a formal complaint with the state's real estate commission. Then she contacted a few other neighboring landowners who were just as furious. Turns out, we weren't the only ones they tried to strong-arm. So she organized a small coalition and put everything together: emails, legal errors, incorrect zoning classifications, and brought it to the next HOA board meeting. Now, I wasn't there for that meeting, but I heard all about it. She walked in with a folder the size of a cinder block and calmly laid it out in front of them. Every lie, every violation, every threat they'd made. By the time she was done, their own lawyer was shaking his head. The board didn't even try to argue. They just went quiet. A month later, we got a letter, not from the HOA, but from the county. The annexation had been reversed. All surrounding properties were declared outside the HOA's legal reach. Not only that, but several board members were under investigation for fraud. Our land was safe again. No more threats. No more fines. Just the sound of horses and the wind in the grass. I don't know what kind of person tries to tell a rancher how to live on their own land. But I do know this: they picked the wrong woman to mess with. Because my wife doesn't just know how to work a fence or run a barn. She knows how to shut down a crooked HOA with a single letter. And after this whole mess, I'll never doubt her sweet tea and silence again. That's when I know something big's about to happen. After the letter came and confirmed everything was settled, I figured that would be the end of it. But my wife, being who she is, wasn't quite done. She said, "It's not enough to just win. We need to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else around here." She started holding informal meetings at our place. Just neighbors sitting on folding chairs under the oak tree, sipping coffee, talking about what had happened. A lot of them had no idea they were even at risk. Some had signed papers they didn't fully understand. One guy said he thought he was just agreeing to trash pickup. Turns out he'd signed into a full HOA covenant. So my wife made a flyer, printed 100 copies, and hand-delivered them to properties in a 10-mile radius. It had a simple message: know your land rights. She broke it down clearly: how HOAs form, what they can and can't do, how to check filings with the county, what to do if you're being threatened with illegal fines. It wasn't flashy, but folks listened. A few even brought their own paperwork to our kitchen table and asked her to look it over. And I'll tell you something I wasn't expecting. Word got around. People from the next county started calling. A couple from the other side of the state even drove out to talk to her about what happened. Before long, my wife was doing more legal work than ranch work. She didn't charge a dime, not 1 cent, but she helped over a dozen landowners push back on shady HOA tactics. One evening, I watched her talk a 70-year-old widow through how to draft a cease and desist letter to a board that was threatening to tow her truck for having farm equipment in view. That woman cried on the phone when it was over. She said no one had ever stood up for her like that before. We never meant for this to become a mission, but it kind of did. We started calling it the Porch Law Project, half joking, but it stuck. People trusted her, not just because she knew the law, but because she cared. She wasn't some distant attorney in a high-rise office. She was one of them. She understood what it meant to grow your own food, fix your own roof, and want to be left alone on land you worked for. A few months after all this, the original developer, the one who'd built that HOA mess in the first place, tried to buy up more property. He ran into a brick wall. Every time he tried to acquire land, the owners were already informed, armed with documentation, and not the least bit interested in his offers. He even tried to call my wife to work something out. She told him kindly, "You should read your own contract. You have zero authority on this side of the road." That was the last we heard from him. These days, life's gone back to normal. The ranch is quiet again. We rebuilt the south fence, finally painted the barn a color we actually liked, and added 2 more horses to the herd. But now, when the mail comes and there's an envelope with legal letterhead, I don't worry. I hand it to my wife, pour her a tea, and wait. Because I know one thing for sure. No HOA, no board, no developer's going to outsmart her on the law. Not now, not ever. And the folks in this county? They know it too. My wife became a kind of legend around here. Not because she shouted. Not because she fought dirty. But because she read the fine print and stood her ground. She didn't just shut down an HOA. She reminded people that your land is worth protecting, and you don't need anyone's permission to live free on it. It's been over a year now since that whole HOA mess. Life slowed back down in the best way. The days feel like they used to, early mornings feeding the animals, long afternoons fixing things that always seem to break on a ranch, and peaceful evenings watching the sun fall behind the hills. But in town, something's changed. Folks are more alert, more aware, and a little less trusting of signatures and promises that come with clipboards and shiny brochures. My wife, though she'd never call herself a leader, kind of became one. Not the kind that stands on stages or talks over people. She leads with answers, with quiet clarity. When people call her now, it's not just about HOAs. It's easement disputes, property boundary confusion, shady land sales. She listens, checks the county records, pulls up old plats, and gives people the tools to fight back. And she never turned it into a business. She could have. She's been offered more than a few checks. One family even tried to give her a horse in exchange for her help. But she always says the same thing. You protect what you love. And I love this land, all of it. Not just our slice. I started building her a small office out back, just a shed at first. Nothing fancy. But now it's insulated, got a desk, a little window, some bookshelves full of old property law books and files from folks she's helped. We jokingly call it the legal corral. She rolls her eyes every time I say it, but she likes it. I can tell. Then last fall, something unexpected happened. The county board invited her to speak at a zoning commission meeting. Not as a lawyer, as a landowner. She sat in front of a panel, laid out how predatory annexations hurt small communities, and explained, in plain language, how people like us get overlooked because we don't have fancy lawyers or lobbyists. You could hear a pin drop in that room. They passed 2 new review policies that night. She didn't say much afterward. Just drove home, took off her boots, and started cooking like it was any other night. But I looked at her a little differently. She wasn't just my wife or the one who kept our land safe. She was becoming part of something bigger. A few months ago, one of the original HOA board members, the same one who tried to fine us for excessive hay storage, showed up at our front gate. I almost didn't let him in. But my wife waved me off and walked up to the fence. He apologized. Said he'd quit the board. Said he never knew how deep they'd gotten into shady tactics. And then he asked her for help. His cousin was getting bullied by another developer upstate. She didn't say yes right away. She just asked for the paperwork and said, "I'll take a look." That's who she is. She doesn't hold grudges. She just fixes what's broken and moves on. Now there's talk about forming a regional landowners alliance. Not a political thing, not another HOA nightmare, just a network of people who believe in clear rights, shared resources, and local support. A few folks are trying to get her to lead it. She hasn't decided yet. She says the horses still need feeding, and the pasture fence isn't going to repair itself. But I know her. If she says yes, it won't be for the attention. It'll be because someone needs protecting. As for me, I've stopped worrying about the future. I've seen what one smart, stubborn woman can do with nothing but a laptop, a steady voice, and the law on her side. The land's safe. The ranch is peaceful. And I sleep like a rock, knowing that if trouble ever comes again, it won't stand a chance against her. Spring came early this year. The bluebonnets bloomed thick across the field behind the barn, and we added a few beehives near the orchard. Life was good, not flashy, not loud, just full. The kind of full that makes you pause and realize you don't need more than what's already in front of you. But even in that peace, the calls never stopped coming. It wasn't just locals anymore. People from 3, 4 counties over were asking for her help. Some called because their wells were being restricted by HOA water usage policies. Others were told they couldn't hang laundry outside because it lowered community standards. One man, a veteran, was facing fines because he kept a flag flying above regulation height. That one lit a fire under her. She sat at her desk, read every page of their bylaws, and found an obscure clause that nullified their claim. 2 letters later, they dropped the fine. 3 weeks after that, the HOA quietly changed its flag policy. The thing about my wife is, she doesn't chase fights. But if you bring one to her gate, she won't just end it. She'll make sure you can't bring it to anyone else, either. Eventually, a few local attorneys reached out and offered to partner with her. Said they'd handle the court side if she handled the research and community side. It wasn't a bad idea. She agreed on one condition: no charging family landowners who were being bullied out of what they already owned. If someone was about to lose a piece of property they'd worked their whole life for, she wouldn't be part of a system that asked them to pay to defend it. That's when the nonprofit started. She didn't want her name on it. Said it wasn't about her. But I'll be honest, it wouldn't exist without her. A few of us built the cabin that became the headquarters, small, with a tin roof and a wraparound porch. We strung lights through the oak trees and put out benches made from reclaimed barnwood. Volunteers came. Retired judges, real estate agents, old ranchers who knew every inch of county soil. What started as one woman reading through legal filings on our porch turned into a statewide support network for rural property owners. And it didn't take long before people started showing up in person. Some came with files. Others came with tears. One old man drove 5 hours just to say thank you, not for himself, but because his daughter had watched one of my wife's online videos and used it to stop an HOA from building a fence through her pasture. That video, we didn't plan on it going viral. But one of our nephews filmed her explaining annexation laws in plain English and posted it online. 2 million views later, we had emails from across the country. Some just saying thanks. Some begging for help. We had to get a second phone line. She answered as many as she could. And when she couldn't, she made sure someone else could. And yet, through all of that, she never stopped being who she was. Every morning, she's still out feeding chickens. Still patching the barn roof herself because she doesn't like waiting on contractors. Still makes Sunday supper like it's her sacred duty. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was just a rancher's wife with a love for order and quiet. But I know the truth. I live it every day. She's a force. Not the kind that tears through like a storm, but the kind that roots in deep and doesn't move. The kind you build around. The kind that changes everything, not with noise, but with knowledge. And now, our ranch isn't just a ranch anymore. It's a refuge. People drive by and call it that place where it all started. I see young couples starting out who now know their rights before they buy land. I see old-timers who once thought they were alone now walking taller, knowing they've got someone in their corner. Some folks ask me if we'll ever move, maybe to be closer to the action, as one man put it. I just laugh. The action comes to us now, and we don't need more. We've got the land, the quiet, the truth, and a woman who can shut down any HOA with one hand while planting tomatoes with the other. That's more than enough. By late summer, people started calling it the Quiet Rebellion. We didn't give it that name. Some local reporter did, after visiting the ranch and interviewing a few folks sitting out under the sycamores waiting for their turn to speak with my wife. He was expecting protest signs and speeches. Instead, he found people trading property maps, sipping coffee, and learning how to take back control over their land, legally, peacefully, and thoroughly. That article got picked up by a few national outlets, and the phone line didn't stop ringing for weeks. She never chased the spotlight. When reporters showed up, she was polite, but firm. This isn't a movement. It's just people finally reading the fine print. But I could tell something about the attention unsettled her. Not because she didn't like it, but because she never wanted to be the face of anything. She just wanted to fix what was broken. Still, the work kept coming, and so did the gratitude. One day, a man showed up with his teenage son. He didn't say much at first, just stood there, hat in his hands, until she came out to greet him. Then he said, "You don't know me, but you saved my family's ranch. I came to say thank you face to face, and so my boy could see what strength looks like." That was the first time I ever saw her tear up in front of a stranger. Later that week, we had our first porch session with a young woman who had just inherited land from her grandfather. She was 23 and overwhelmed. Developers were already circling, offering checks that sounded life-changing. But she came to us first, holding the deed in one hand and a notebook full of questions in the other. My wife sat with her for 3 hours. When they were done, that girl didn't just know her rights, she knew her worth. That's when it hit me. My wife wasn't just protecting land. She was preserving dignity, empowering people to hold the line, not out of stubbornness, but out of love for something that couldn't be priced or paved over. Then came the unexpected call. A quiet voice on the other end of the line said she was a state legislator working on rural property law reform and had heard about the ranch lawyer. My wife didn't say much at first, just listened, took notes, asked questions the way she always does, clear, simple, sharp. A few weeks later, we were invited to the Capitol to speak at a hearing. She didn't want to go, but I told her, "You've been doing the work. Now, let them see the person behind it." She wore her old boots, her hair in a braid, and carried a folder under one arm. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't bring drama. She brought facts. Line by line, she explained how broken annexation laws and unchecked HOA authority were hurting real families. And for once, the room listened. Not out of obligation, but because she made it impossible not to. 2 bills passed out of committee that day. One made it harder to annex private land without a supermajority vote. The other required full transparency in HOA formation and expansion filings. She didn't brag. She just nodded once and said, "That'll help more people than I ever could alone." We drove back in silence for a while. Then I reached over, squeezed her hand, and said, "You know, this isn't just our ranch anymore." She looked at me and smiled. "It always will be, but maybe now it's also something more." Now, folks leave small wooden signs near the gate when they stop by, carved by hand. Words like "land strong," "not yours to take," "quiet rebellion lives here." We never asked for them, but we hung them up along the fence line anyway. The horses still need feeding. The pasture still floods when the rains come too hard. Life hasn't gotten easier, just deeper, more full of meaning. And I know, long after we're gone, people will remember what happened here. Not because of lawyers or laws, but because one woman decided she wasn't going to let anyone take what she loved without a fight. And the fight? Well, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was smart. It was kind. And it was unstoppable. Because when you build a rebellion out of truth and you lead it from your front porch, you don't just win. You change everything.